Hello, and today I'm going to be talking about metal. I really like metal. A lot of you might have seen my Spoon June video already, where I recommend you paint spoons for a month to get better at painting metal. Um, but I've been thinking, and well, here are some paintings that I've been doing on heavy paint, and they're all studies. But when I'm painting metal, I think I've kind of condensed whatever process I used to have into just painting. But I thought I'd go back and try and see if I could come up with a way that maybe people who are less comfortable with painting metal can start and approach it more methodically, more technically. So that's what I'm going to do. That one was one I made earlier, and it was a success. So I'm going to do another one and record it. So the first thing that you want to do is get some inspiration. If you search for metal PBR, you get a lot of kind of substance painter spheres that modelers and people have made using HDRIs and all sorts that are just metal textures, and you can get some inspiration as to what kind of metal you want to paint. Obviously there's tons of different metal. You've got tin, iron, steel, brass, and then depending on how rusty it is or how dull it is, you'll get different levels of reflectivity. So it's a decision you have to make first, and then when you've chosen your metal, I want to do quite a reflective kind of polished steel look. You can just get painting. For this technique, you don't necessarily have to paint your own sphere. I suppose you could just grab the PBR image and sample that, but you know, if you want to keep it a bit more painterly and have a bit more of your own influence on it, I think it's a good idea to paint it. So off I go, painting a small little metal sphere. I think in a second I compare it to the brass one I did earlier and realize I haven't got enough contrast, because that's one of the major elements of painting metal that people kind of miss out on, is the fact that your levels are kind of crushed a bit more. You get more contrast, and that contrast is more closely packed together, so you get very dark darks next to very bright brights, which is something that we're usually told to stay away from, and it can look a bit weird. So now that we have our sphere, I'm going to be using a tool in Photoshop called the Mixer Brush, but in theory you could just, you know, eyedropper tool it and just select the color manually. What the Mixer Brush does is it just selects an area and puts it back down elsewhere. It's like a clone stamp. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the area of the helmet and I'm saying, okay, the top of this helmet is an upward facing plane, so I'm going to sample the area of the sphere that's upward facing as well. In a similar fashion, the area on the side of this mouth guard piece, or the sort of snout, is a side-facing plane, so I'm just sampling the area of the sphere that's on its side and putting it down, and you can see it's quite messy at the moment. But you just build it up in this kind of way, and it's difficult to visualize at first, but you get used to it quite quickly, and it's very good in the sense that it's methodical enough that you can decide exactly how reflective you want your metal to be. You can decide what you want it to reflect, you can decide what color you want it to be, all before you actually start painting on your subject. So there's room for a lot of experimentation. I mean, this example that I'm doing, I've already painted this helmet a separate color and a separate material, so I definitely think that this technique could benefit you if you're doing iterative work or any kind of designs. This in itself is a design for a challenge that's on my Discord at the moment. I'll link it in the description, you can join, where after a month of painting spoons and studying helmets last week, or kind of this week at the same time, I was encouraging the people in the Discord to start painting metal from their imagination to apply what they had learned. Because don't get me wrong, painting from reference is absolutely amazing. You should study metal, you should paint from reference and learn what you can. But obviously, you only get certain references from certain angles, and if you're designing your own helmet and putting it in a certain orientation, you're not going to get the perfect reference that you want of the perfect material. So being able to take a material like those PBR metal balls and applying it to something from your own head is quite useful. I'm just getting into the stage now with it where I'm going over it, not with the Mixer Brush, but all of the base colors are down, and I'm just going back in with a kind of regular brush and adding in some warmer bounce light on the underside, stuff like that, just to kind of bring it to life. I probably should have added more warmer light on the sphere, but it just shows that you can edit it once it's on the actual subject as well. You know, the sphere doesn't have to be the be all and end all of how you render this material. It just gets you going quite quickly. Once you've invested the time into the sphere, you can just sample it and apply it to whatever you're painting, and feasibly you could have an entire Photoshop document or whatever other software you're using full of these material spheres, so that depending on what you want to paint, you can just grab it, copy paste a sphere in and start painting that way. Or, you know, you could just copy paste an image of a pre-existing material sphere, because people do it all the time with 3D modeling and texturing and things. There are a lot of kind of PBR spheres out there that you can take inspiration from. Now I'm just kind of adding scratches and stuff to make it seem a bit less perfect, because I did choose this very, very polished metal, and I want to make it seem a bit more battered. I think that beating up your knights can give them a lot of character. Obviously it might not suit all characters, but knights tend to be fighting each other a lot of the time, and it would make sense for them to have dents and scratches all over their armor, and it makes them feel more rounded as characters, like they've actually been doing something and not just been in a display case for the past 100 years. What I'm doing now is I'm trying to show you how to make a dent. So I like to think of dents as metal belly buttons. That's the best way that I've found to visualize them, and you can really kind of grab them and plonk them onto wherever you like on the metal, and as long as you have the light going in the right direction according to where your light source is, it should work. All that's left to do now is to actually apply that kind of same principle, the metal belly button, to the helmet. So there you go, you make a shadow, you blend out one side, and then you just put a highlight on the other side to just give it that kind of bevelly, dented look. It's really that simple, and it's stuff like that that just brings it to life. Obviously you don't need it. Not all armor you're going to want to be dented, but the more of these little tiny things that you can dot about, the more believable your metal is. A lot of metal gets this weird kind of spotty rust that I'll pull up on screen, and you know, other metal has different colored rust and certain scratches, and if you have a really reflective metal, you could even get a kind of slightly less rough fingerprint on it and that kind of thing, because in essence it's world building on a really, really tiny scale. It's not world building in the sense that you're designing a grand mead hall or a castle. It's world building in the sense that you're putting a scratch on that helmet that means that this knight might have been fighting a pack of werewolves. Do you know what I mean? It's like tiny little clues that you dot about that the viewer has to look at it a bit more closely to find, but when they find them, or maybe notice them almost subconsciously, they really do bring out the best in a design. So I'm just changing the saturation and kind of lightness of the line work now. That's still on top, but you can see it's kind of blended in because it's not like a perfectly black line art. I think it's maybe 40% brightness set to multiply. I'm just cropping it. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's a bit of a rushed one. I can't make really long videos at the moment because I'm at home with my family and the internet is too bad to upload videos longer than 10 minutes. It would just take me entire days to upload them. So I hope you've learned something. I'm excited, especially for the people in my Discord who have been painting spoons and things, maybe a bit more cautious about painting metal. I'm excited for them to try this because it's something that I literally tested this morning, and now I've made a YouTube video on it, and I want to see if other people can make something of it and get something out of it. So if you do end up using it, which, you know, don't feel any pressure to, please do tag me in it on Instagram. I really love seeing everyone's work. I've had loads of people tag me, showing me their studies and things that they've been inspired to do, and it's really lovely, brightens up my day. Speaking of which, have a lovely day. Join the Discord if you haven't. Lots of lovely people there, and I'll see you in the next one.